I think ultimately that Tennessee would have to have bad quarterback play to be anywhere close to 19. And that brings in a conversation from On Three as Andy Staples and Brent Hubbs got together. And he said, Brent said the same thing that I've been told about Nico
Iamaleava.
There you go. That his maturity coming in was practically breathtaking. That his willingness to fit in and be a part of the team and not think the mindset of I got to bench Joe Milton this year, I got to start this year, has been pretty remarkable. I think that he came in with enough talent to motivate Joe Milton if there was any sense that he might be lackadaisical heading into this season. But that's the reviews I've heard of Nico have been absolutely fantastic, Josh, as far as his maturity. You?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. It's contrast to those whispers that Dennis Dodd reported on. Reported is too strong of a description from several months ago. We talked about that at the time. I heard the opposite, and since then, the same deal. He has the physical tools.
Can you remind everybody what Dennis said?
Yeah, Dennis wrote before spring practice that there were whispers that Nico might not be worth the reported money that he was receiving through name, image, likeness. And that can be a whole separate discussion when we talk about worth, but the reason he was saying that was from a football perspective. And I thought that was laughable at the time because, one, he hadn't even practiced yet. So what exactly were they basing that on? Some workouts in the winter as an early enrollee, a high school senior that had not even officially started college besides, enrolling in spring semester classes. But I didn't even hear that at the time. At the time I heard, yeah, he's putting in the work. I physically witnessed him on a Saturday night leaving the complex at 9:30, something like that. It was after a Tennessee basketball game, and he was pulling out of the complex where he had been, whatever they were doing, working out, watching film on a Saturday night during the spring semester. So it was really silly and kind of out of nowhere because Dennis also had a colleague that wrote the opposite not that long after that. But we saw him in the spring game make some throws that backed up why he was ranked so high. And then if you want to just remove all the physical ability, because I don't think anybody's really questioning his tools in terms of arm strength, release, ability to move. How much work is he putting in? What is his understanding, his maturity, if he is getting all this money and he's coming in with all these accolades? And everything I've heard has been great. At some point, he will have to prove it on the field in the SEC, and he does need to add weight, which applies to 100% of freshman quarterbacks that arrive. So that can't be a criticism if it's something that everybody has to do. It's more of an analysis. So everything I've heard has been great. Does that mean he's ready as a true freshman to go out there and win big games in the SEC? That would be a stretch, but I think that's a stretch for everybody. Bryce Young didn't play right away. C.J. Stroud didn't play right away, and they went 1-2 in the NFL draft 2 years later. So everything I've heard about Nico has been great, and some of the things I've heard has been better than expected with the expectations already sky high.
Most important question, what was Nico driving?
It was a sport utility vehicle.
Was it? What brand?
As Phil from Modern Family would say, an SUV.
SUV, very, very good catchback. So what brand was it? Like a Hummer?
No, I don't. Well, I mean, it was nighttime, so I didn't pay attention to
who drives a Hummer anymore.
What year? But it wasn't anything
guys
fancy,
that make.
But it was
$8 million. It was just a normal car.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it was a clunker by any means. It's just there was nothing fancy about it that stood out, but it was an SUV.
Okay, gotcha. All right, and
I don't know, but I don't know that it was his. I don't know. It could be a teammate's. It could be a rental because he hadn't been on campus that long. So I don't know.
Okay, well, I mean, the guy's making like $8-9 million. I'm just curious. I wonder if that number's gone up since he's been on campus.
Yes, yeah. That's the other thing is we had the old days of if we saw an athlete driving a car, it'd raise eyebrows like, oh, wonder how he got that. That's old. That's old news. That doesn't happen anymore.
No, and real quick, Caleb, I know you got something, but I remember one reporter, and I'll tell you off the air who this is, Josh, but it would threaten coaches with, hey, I'll just go around and get license plates of the cars and where the players park if he didn't get his way. My rhyme with ifeth. There you go. So go ahead, Caleb.
So, Josh, it's funny because everybody's talking about Nico so much, and I mean, I've never. It's not that I haven't seen a freshman get this type of hype. I mean, I haven't, but well, I have because where I'm going with this, and I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm thinking like what this all means for Joe Milton, because it is rare where you see a freshman, not just a freshman quarterback, but a quarterback expected to be a backup this year, get this type of hype when there's another starting quarterback entering his senior year. I mean, is the only comparable situation I could think is Chris Leak, Tim Tebow in 2006. And then Dave, you might be able to throw this in, but I would assume Jerry Colquitt, Peyton Manning had to deal with the same thing. Now that changed because Jerry Colquitt got hurt the first game of the year. But are those the two most comparable situations that you would say applies here, where there's a clear starter, but the backup freshman is getting all the hype and the talk?
Well, I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence, when he showed up at Clemson, there was a lot of expectation that he would see the field at some point, and then he did after 4 games where Kelly Bryant had the chance to move on. So that was able to – Clemson did him a solid by allowing him to hold on to that red shirt because they were going to make the change. I mean, when Bryce Young showed up at Alabama, I thought there was a lot of hype there and an expectation that, yeah, Mac Jones, I don't know. And then Mac ended up being a terrific player and a first-round pick at quarterback. The thing is that I hear a lot of hype about both. With Joe Milton, the show he put on at the Manning Passing Academy, launching those 70, 80-yarders, I don't think Nico could draw that kind of crowd of anticipation of let's see what he can do. I think people would be excited to see his physical tools, but Nico's not throwing the ball 70 yards with ease where it looks like he's just flicking the ball 10, 20 yards down the field. Joe's able to do that. So those videos have created all kinds of hype and attention around Joe. I think from what I've seen with Tennessee fans, there is excitement and hope that Joe is able to continue what they saw from the win against Clemson and tap into all this potential that has been talked about for 2 years and unleash it in this Tennessee offense this upcoming fall. And then it will be Nico's time. But right now, I don't have too many Tennessee fans say to me, hey, I think Nico's going to take over. I don't think Joe's going to get it done. There are some that have that opinion, and I have heard that. But more often I hear Joe's got it now. This is Joe's offense. He's going to be great. He's going to help lead Tennessee back to a 10-win season, maybe even better. I hear more of that. That doesn't mean it speaks for everybody, but that is the reaction I get right now. And over the last month, I think the hype has built around Joe because he has been out there and fans are seeing him and hearing from him. His quote the other day at the Manning Passing Academy that came from his media session where he said, I don't lose in Florida. That started to get some attention. Tennessee goes to Florida this upcoming season. So I think fans are very excited about the confidence that Joe is showing. And from that, are growing confident in his ability to have a big year as a senior.
Dave,
yeah, go ahead, Kev.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask one last thing because we're talking about Joe. Both you guys, yes or no, will we see a touchdown pass of more than 70 yards through the air, meaning the receiver catches it in the end zone and it's a 70-yard touchdown pass this year?
Oh, wow. Goes in the air 70 yards. We're going to see some overthrows of 70 yards.
I know. Will we see a touchdown
where he launches it from behind the 30 and it's caught in the end zone?
Yes. Yes.
Are we counting? Are we saying a 5-step drop? So he's roughly 5. We're counting it from where he throws it. I will say yes.
I will say no from the line of scrimmage to where the ball is caught 70 plus. I'll say no. He might have a 70 plus yard touchdown, but I'm going to say that's going to include the yak. There's another one for you. Yards after catch.
Yards after catch.
What the WTH? I would.
Yeah, they don't call it yards after reception. Yards after catch is what we're looking at.
That's right. And I would say this to your point, Caleb. Jacob Eason, even though it didn't pan out, I think he was the guy that was supposed to replace Stetson Bennett, and that didn't work out. But I don't see that happening to Nico. I don't see a transfer. I don't see anything like that. And I would say this. I think that for those that want to see
Daniels as a transfer from USC.
No, I was talking about Jacob Eason, who came from Washington and ended up transferring back west. when he came in, I think everybody thought, but I would take Daniels too. I think there are about 3 or 4 guys they brought in they thought would bench Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, well, I think your timeline's a little off there. So it went Eason and then Jake Fromm. Fromm was the guy after Eason. They went back-to-back freshmen that came in with a ton of hype there.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so one thing I would say about Josh Heupel that could be a criticism when it comes to handling quarterbacks is he too loyal to a quarterback. I wonder if he would be willing to pull the trigger if Joe Milton didn't play well. What do you think?
That's a good question. I mean, Virginia and Austin Peay, I just would be stunned if it goes poorly. But game number 3 at Florida, there's a chance that Florida's defense comes out and they're aggressive and they're able to force pressure, and it forces Tennessee's offense into some mistakes. And in the middle of the game, they're trying to get some things figured out. And win or lose, what if that kind of carries over the next couple of weeks? I don't know. The last time a change was made, it was kind of forced on Josh Heupel. When Joe Milton got hurt against Pitt, Hendon Hooker came in and then continued on after that, and it just was obvious that he needed to remain in the position. There was no opportunity for Milton to get that job back. But what if Milton hadn't been hurt in that Pittsburgh game? How long would he have been able to stay as the quarterback? How long until a change would have been made? Because I think a change was inevitable with how things were going there. I don't know. So this would be a test, but I do agree in the loyalty part. I think that applies to his staff because loyalty is also from comfort in knowing what you're getting out of the player, or at least believing you know what you're getting out of the player from what you've seen in the practice field and the meetings and the conversations you've had. I think that's applied to the coaching moves we've seen where guys have been elevated. Ablin this offseason, last year, Kelsey Pope, and paid off with Kelsey Pope. He has a Blitnikoff Award winner. He's 1 for 1 as a full-time assistant coach. So if Joe struggles, if he doesn't play quite as well, if the offense is not as crisp as expected, I mean, he also brought in Nico. So what is loyalty? Because Nico's his guy too. That's who he recruited. Joe's a guy that transferred in. But from everything I know and understand, I believe Josh Heupel is fully confident in Joe getting the job done. And that would lead me to believe that he'll get a pretty long leash, that if there's some struggles early on, part of that could be due to what they see with the offensive line. They don't have the same protection they could expect with Darnell Wright, and they're trying to get the left guard position figured out. So if they see some of the issues coming from pressure that is caused by opposing defenses due to offensive line issues, well, they're probably not going to be all that confident in a true freshman going in. Also consider they have 2 scholarship quarterbacks. If you make a change, well, you move Joe to number 2. Where's his mindset at that point? If you go to a freshman has to get it done because you've now pulled the plug on Joe Milton as a senior, and be difficult to get that confidence back too. So I think they will give him as much time as they believe he needs if it's slow out of the gates.
Is it fair to say that playing Milton ahead of Hooker after what we saw the past couple of years that's been Josh Heupel's biggest mistake at Tennessee?
Well, he hasn't made too many, so yeah, I think so. And it's still fairly explainable. At the time, I thought Hendon made more sense based on what we had seen in college. When they went with Joe, I did also give Josh Heupel the benefit of the doubt at the time that, okay, I know he can coach offense, and I know Joe Milton has this skill, so maybe it will work out. But it was too quick of a turnaround for Joe arriving to a few months later being the starting quarterback in an offense that he admittedly was still trying to learn. His knowledge of the offense is so much better now. And there were differing opinions behind the scenes at the time. Should it be Hendon? Should it be Joe? It was the wrong decision, but it was explainable why they went with Joe. But, I mean, how many mistakes has Josh Heupel made to this point? So, yeah, I'd say it ranks number 1.
I mean, wouldn't that be – I don't want to be like – I don't want to call it arrogant, but have you guys ever seen a coach who is so thoroughly confident in his ability to coach offense the way Josh Heupel is? I mean, he hires staff members that are on his staff that are loyal, that are familiar with the system. He wants his guys at quarterback, so he picked Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker. Because he signed Joe Milton. Is it me or does Josh Heupel have a level of borderline arrogance of how much he thinks he knows about the offense and the guys he wants.
I would be arrogant if I were as good as him at coaching offense.
I would
I'll tell you
say
that
yes.
much.
Yes.
So, yeah, he does. Who's the most arrogant offensive coach of all time? Steve Spurrier? I mean, his belief in what he was doing and changing quarterbacks, I mean, that's not what Heupel is doing. So, yeah, maybe a little bit of it. But, Heupel didn't bring Hooker to campus. So he looked at it and said, okay, Joe's a guy we need to bring in. And coming out of the spring, it's not like that spring when Josh Heupel had arrived, because Hendon had arrived having been recruited as a transfer by Jeremy Pruitt. And, that was such a wild time in Knoxville as a transition for everybody. I didn't have anybody in the spring coming out of it saying, man, Hendon is the guy. This guy is going to lead this offense. So when Joe arrived, it made sense with the questions that still loomed over the quarterback position. At that time, at that time of Joe coming in and going into fall camp, a lot of the opinion was from fans, okay, Joe probably wins the job. If it's not him, then it's got to be Harrison Bailey. This will be Harrison's chance in the offense. And then it was Hendon Hooker. We ran a Twitter poll, which is far from scientific, but who do you want to be the starter? Joe Milton.
Very scientific.
Yeah, Joe Milton, Harrison Bailey, Hendon Hooker. Hooker barely got any votes. It was Milton that led. Then there were a lot of votes for Harrison Bailey. Then there were some votes that made it appear like maybe somebody accidentally clicked on Hendon. He got no talk, and he ends up being a Heisman contender 2 years later. So it would be revisionist history to say it was obvious at the time that Hendon should be the guy. And that's also, to me, why Hendon deserves so much credit, which he's gotten plenty of at this point, that he knew pretty early on after Joe had arrived that, okay, Joe's going to get the opportunity here. And then he goes through fall camp and then the start of the season being the backup. And it would be easy to wonder, why did I come here? I came here with Jeremy Pruitt recruiting me. Now there's this new coach and he doesn't have the confidence in me. But everything I heard was Hendon was as dedicated as if he had been named the starter. And that allowed him to be ready. And that's why he did what he did after he took over.
Well, and if you want to put a positive spin on this, you could say that he had Hendon ready. So in coaching, the way he set up practice, Hendon was ready. So you would anticipate if something happened to Joe or he didn't play well, that Nico would be ready this year. That's fair to say, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've never heard any ill will from Hendon Hooker about how it was handled by Josh Heupel. So, yeah, I mean, it was obviously a mistake based on what we've seen from Hendon Hooker and how things started out with Joe Milton. But it was not an egregious mistake, and it's on a short list of mistakes that Josh Heupel has been made. And, yeah, absolutely. When Hendon went out there, he did some good things against Pitt. He had that interception that he threw late. No blame at all. I mean, again, he hadn't been getting the first-team reps. So, it all worked out. It all worked out, and eventually a change would have been made, I believe. How long? Tennessee's thankful that it won't have to know, and now the hope is that what Joe understands now will pay off for him, and part of that comes from learning from Hendon Hooker.